As the draft gets closer, Josh, we know we start to hear some things, and sometimes we need to differentiate what is true and what is not. Let's start off with the quarterback position, as always, it seems like in Philadelphia. A lot of Carson Wentz stuff circulating over the last 24 hours. It almost feels like Carson Wentz is to Doug Peterson as Marcus Mariota was to Chip Kelly.
That's not a bad analogy. You know, it's really in this time of the year, you really have to take a lot of the reports and rumors and that are circulating with a grain of salt. But I do think it's a possibility that the Eagles move up in the draft to select Carson Wentz. I wouldn't say it's likely. I would bet against it, but I do think it's a possibility, and I don't just think it's, you know, a bunch of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, now they're going to work out Christian Hackenberg next week, and today actually. They're going to work out Ezekiel Elliott next week. This is a busy time. It seems like they're doing a lot of their due diligence here. But if they were to do an 8 trade up from 8, how far up do they have to go to get Wentz?
That's a good question. And, you know, one thing that I'm not sure that people are thinking enough about is I feel like a lot of people think, well, maybe one of the guys could fall, you know, Golf or Wentz could fall to 7 to the 49ers. So maybe the Eagles could just, you know, go up to number 6 and get ahead of Chip Kelly in San Francisco. But maybe the 49ers want to trade up because they don't think that a quarterback will fall to them. Maybe a different team, maybe the Texans, maybe they're interested in trading up. So I think that you have to keep in mind that it's not just about where teams are now, but other teams could be interested in not just leapfrogging the Eagles or the 49ers, but some teams, they may want to move up all the way to number 1 to Tennessee spot because maybe they've identified their guy and they don't know that, you know, they think the Browns will take a quarterback and they want to get their guy. So maybe you'll have to move up into the top 2 picks. I mean, I think that's a realistic possibility that these 2 quarterbacks go in the first 2 picks.
Josh Paunil, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. Some mock drafts with Forrest Buckner in there, a defensive player. Now, he's a 3-4 guy. Some have suggested he could slide down and play 4-3 inside Oregon. How ironic. Would you be a little surprised if DeForest Buckner was there at 8 and his name was called?
Yeah, it would be a little ironic if after the Eagles got rid of the big Oregon guy they brought in, former Duck. You know, he's a guy that he's a talented guy. I don't think he'll make it to 8. I think it's a possibility, but I don't think it's that likely. The one concern I have if the Eagles want to take him is a couple of things. A, he fits better in the 3-4. You know, talking to him at the Combine in Indianapolis back at the end of February, you know, he was saying that most teams that he talked to were saying that he fit more inside in a 4-3 at defensive tackle rather than defensive end. So, first of all, you wouldn't be putting him in his best system. But also, if there's one position of strength for the Eagles, it's defensive tackle. And I'm really, you know, I'm pretty big on best player available, but I would have a couple of questions for Howie Roseman if they did want to take DeForest Buckner. A, does this signal that you don't think a long-term contract extension with Fletcher Cox will get done? I don't think that's the case. I do think that they'll get this done this year. And then the other scenario is, well, if that's not the case, do you think Benny Logan won't transition smoothly from a 3-4 to a 4-3? And I also think Benny Logan will have a good year, and they'll want to keep him around. So it would be very interesting in terms of the signaling and what it means in terms of the defensive tackles they already have on the roster, because you have 2 young, talented defensive tackles, and to bring in another guy would be a very interesting choice. I wouldn't expect it, but he is a possibility just because of his talent level.
Josh, has there been any update or anything on Fletcher Cox, you know, getting a contract done? It seemed like there was a lot of juice early. It seems like it's gone away. Is this a situation now where maybe after the draft, halfway through the year, any update on where they stand there?
Yeah, I really think it's just a matter of their focus on the draft right now. These next few weeks, they're going to be focused on evaluating these prospects, how they're going to have their, you know, big board slotted. Do they want to trade up? Do they want to trade back? So I think the next few weeks is really going to be focused on this last weekend in April. I think it's really when this would come about, most likely it'd be some kind of downtime where the Eagles can really, you know, get back to focusing more of their time on negotiations with Fletcher Cox rather than, you know, evaluating these quarterbacks and these running backs, these wide receivers. Once you have your team more assembled, then I think is when those negotiations will kind of kick back up again.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about this Doug Peterson, mainly because a Kansas City radio station reached out to me to talk about it with them. They think it's a big story down there. Is it at all a story?
Honestly, that's not really something that I want to speculate on. I mean, there are all kinds of crazy, unsubstantiated things on the internet, and as long as there's no reason to believe it, it's not really something that I want to speculate on. I don't think it's a big story.
Well, at this point, right, I was kind of the way that I looked at it. I said, I haven't seen it anywhere other than one outlet. I don't know that has been talked a lot about here, but down in Kansas City, they think it's something. So something at least to keep an eye on in our world. It's Josh Paunil, Birds 24/7 over at PhillyMag.com. The NFL draft just 20 days away. And, of course, we'll have the draft here on 97.3. All right, Josh, have a good weekend, pal.
Thanks for having me, Mike.